This is our tropical marine tank. They get shipped all around the world. They go through a lot of a stressful process to come from the tropics to America or to a catching facility. They're then brought into New Zealand, spend 3 weeks in tanks there, then go into the pet shop, and in the process quite a few of them can die. If you're not doing your job properly, you can actually lose a lot of fish in your whole tank and thousands of dollars worth of livestock, because some of these things are very expensive. Whereas if you can learn on the local marine stuff and get your job done right with that first, then you can go into the tropical side of things. The local marines don't require as much attention to detail as what these do, because when you're doing corals, you need to look at levels in your water of your different chemicals, the calcium, magnesium. The water has to be perfect to be able to grow the hard corals, so you've got to have low phosphates and all the bits and pieces. But yeah, we just don't have, we do have some, but we don't have the selection of vibrant and beautiful fish that you can do from the islands. But in New Zealand we do have our own dead man's fingers, which are one of our types of sponges. We have a coral, jewel anemones, so there are bits and pieces, but you get a lot more variety of the cleanup crew, your crabs, your crayfish and bits and pieces with your local marine that you just can't get available in this country because of our import restrictions and everything for the tropical marine tanks. Now this tank might not look it, but it's actually 1 metre wide, and this tank is 800 litres, just like the big one was before. We have no substrate in this tank, just a little bit, and this substrate here is actually produced by that big urchin that's in the middle. He chews through the coralline and deposits little bits of calcium on the floor in here. I don't run substrate because in this tank you're not able to buy the cleanup crew, and very few of our local stuff will actually live in the warmer water, and you're not able to buy that cleanup crew that keep the sand clean and move it around and filter it. Also too, with the power heads, I've got the power heads on the ground to sweep everything up and keep it in the water column, because it's a little bit more important to keep that water pristine in this tank because of the fact that there's all these living organisms in here, and the anemones and the corals and the mushrooms, all of those are actually living animals, and so there's a lot more animal life in this tank than there would be in our local marine tank. In here we have a 12,000 litre per hour pump running on the floor as well, because we've got massive turnover. There's 4 power heads in this tank, and they have a reef setting on them to give them that random flow, to give it that mixed up flow of water running around the tank, so we're keeping everything in suspension and creating interesting bits for the fish. Fish tend to get a bit bored when you put them in a little tank, so you've got to keep things in there interesting for them, and the little hidey holes in the nooks and crannies. Again, it's important to make sure that your fish are compatible with each other in this tank as well. Now this anemone fish here is a spine-cheeked anemone fish, or a maroon clownfish, and her name's Biatch, because if you put your hand in the tank she will come up and take a piece out of it. And I've had her for 17 years, and her little man is a little wee fish. You might be able to see him poke his head out every now and again, and he lives up the background. Now anemone fish are able to go into the anemones, and they're able to live in coexistence with them. And what they'll do is they'll get food and they'll take it back to the anemone.
Feeding time?
Feeding time at the zoo. The anemone's just taken a piece back to the anemone fish, has taken a piece back and stuck it in the anemone. There we are, she's dropped it off now.
And she'll what, eat that later?
No, they fed the anemone. And she'll have some for herself.
So why is the fish feeding the anemone?
There she goes again, and she spit it into the anemone, because that's its host, so it's looking after its host. It's making sure that its host's getting fed as well. It's quite a symbiotic relationship that they have going on. It's, yeah, nature is a wonderful thing. And the more you know, the more you realise how little you know. There she goes again. Just done it again. She might even be taking the manna feed. Now the anemone itself actually lives on the light that's provided by the metal halides and the LEDs in this tank. And all the colour from the anemone comes from what they call zooanthellae, and they're little organisms that live inside the anemone, and what they do is they absorb light and then their toxins or the waste that they put out actually keeps the anemone alive and feeds. So that anemone, that type of anemone doesn't actually have to feed on anything. Some of the other things in here we have a sailfin tang, sorry, not a sailfin tang, it's a little stripy one in the middle there. Little brown tang here, which is a very annoying fish, and one of those fish I don't recommend you get in your fish tank. The big yellow fella with the black face on him, he's a fox face and he's a herbivore, and he'll keep all the algae and bits and pieces of nuisance stuff in the tank down. Coral beauty is a little purple and orange coloured fish looking straight at us at the moment and turning around. There's a pair of those in this tank. I'm hoping that we can get them to breed. I've bred clownfish before, and I bred the Banggai cardinals, which are another fish that we'll go into later on.